Yeehaw!
Alrighty. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to Atlantic Bushcraft Adventures. Hopefully, this worked out all right here. We had a little hiccup there and we had to restart the episode. I think we got it all figured out. So let's go into the assumption we did and we'll see if anybody pops into the chat here, Ben. So tonight we're on episode 248 and we're going to talk a little bit about wildlife observation and photography. You know what I mean? So, kind of your idea, Ben. I know we've talked about this in the past before, especially when we talked about hunting and things like that. But why don't you lead us in a little bit? I know you have some points that you'd like us to cover there. So you take over. I'm gonna make sure that people can see us.
I just checked. We are up, so that's
Awesome.
good. And yeah, so first off, what we usually do is what was the inspiration for this topic? And so today I was hanging out with my daughter, and I said, "Do you want to go for a walk?" And she's like, "Where are we going to go? What are we going to do?" And I'm like, "Well, let's go see the ducks because there's a park not far from here where there's some ducks." I also oftentimes see some other animals. I've seen some beavers there. I've seen the blue heron.
Herring.
I think I sent you a picture of that, and a few other things. So I was like, "This is a good place to go." So that got her excited to go, and I'm just thinking, why do some of us go out there? And a lot of times, we say it's the nature, but we love seeing like animals and wildlife. But how do we do it safely? How do we do it reliably? And how do we get the best out of it? So I think that's the subject of today's podcast.
All right, makes perfect sense to me. And I mean, this is something that we both kind of enjoy in our own ways as well. We've said it in the past. Sometimes it's just nice to get out for a nature walk and observe nature. You know what I mean? We always have phones. Like I mean, we're living in an age now where if you don't have a phone on you at all times, it's considered kind of strange. You know what I mean? Even when there's no cell phone reception, a lot of people keep their phones because it's their MP3 player, it's their flashlight, it's their compass, it's their calculator. You know what I mean? There's tons of functions. And of course, it's your camera. And
Yeah.
a lot of the settings on a phone nowadays, like they're as good as the cameras that we were using not too long ago. I choked on my water. And what was I saying? Yeah, they're just as good as the cameras, like the SDLRs that we were using in the not too distant past, but much more compact. And they got a lot of good built in features to help people take photos too. Like, I'm an amateur photographer, I don't pretend to be anything other than that. So I use the auto mode on my phone a lot, which no, I'm not getting those spectacular photos, but I can get decent photos and then I can play with it. You know what I mean? So anybody can take pictures nowadays.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, and really, what is a picture? It's a captured memory. So when you look at it, it reminds you of why you took it. So it doesn't have to be perfect, but it's it captures something. You're going to be, oh, I remember when I seen that, or I remember that moment, and it brings it back. It brings that back to our lives. Right? So we have a few hints of how you can do the best of this. And the very first one is, when you're in the woods, move slowly and quietly. Um, you know, if you're making a lot of racket, if you're moving around quick and jerky, animals see that more often, and they're gonna avoid you, right? You're something that now is startling, and so they won't come around. And you can see this in a park. Go to any park and go up and sit nice and quietly near where the ducks can congregate, and they'll come usually 2 to 3 feet from you. But if you're jerking around and moving like you know,
A
they're
fool.
they're going to they're going to stay a lot further away from you, right? So step one, just take your time, relax. There's no rush in this.
Well, I
Um,
mean, the simple process of this is even your pets at home, folks. If you make sharp, jerky motions, chances are you're going to startle your pets. Animals are naturally, to a degree, a little skittish. I mean, it's inherent in a lot of animals for self-preservation. If something looks like it's dangerous, you get the heck away from it.
yeah, one hundred
uh,
percent.
but yeah, move slowly, move quietly. The quietly helps as well because a lot of animals have fairly sensitive hearing. So by moving quietly, we're not talking about just, not walking down the trail with bells hanging off you, but at the same time, make your steps purposeful. A lot of skills that you use when you're hunting or even playing hide and seek, honestly, you can take into this. So make your steps purposeful. take fairly, good strides, but look where you're walking. If you're walking over all these crunchy leaves and breaking sticks, this still is a lot of noise. It's more natural noises that you would find in the woods, but it's still a lot of noise. Deer don't usually stick around if you hear a lot of breaking sticks. So try not to break a lot of
No,
sticks when you're walking through the woods. Be purposeful when you're moving branches. Try to walk around things. Don't wear your best windbreaker and run through a softwood stand. You know what I mean?
I mean, the fact is too, like animals can sort of sense why you're there. And so if you're overly paying attention to them or you're moving directly towards them, they sense that. They know that. Similar, if you see someone looking at you, you make eye contact. Animals have the same thing. So be aware of your body language. It means a lot in the woods, believe it or not. Animals can also pick up on some of those same traits. As we pick up the difference between an aggressive animal and an animal that's just relaxed, right? We can sense each other's emotions to a degree. So what's next on our list?
Oh, just
Blending in.
before we move on, because it's relevant, Nomad left a comment. It's still a great way to practice your hunting and stalking on the off season. So yeah, for any hunters and people like that, it's still a good way to get in the woods, practice your skills. Absolutely, Nomad. Sorry, Ben. Go ahead.
Yeah, well, all these will fit into that. Honestly, we've said this in the past. Uh, Photography and hunting is 99% the same skill,
Yeah, for sure.
right? So, all these things work into that. How you choose to use this skill is up to you. But we really want you to, use it responsibly, obviously. Next topic is just blending in. And so this is, you know, and in our notes we put down, wear natural colors, use things that sort of are more in tone with the environment. So things that are blatantly flashy and overly bright or release a lot of smells or you know aren't natural. They're going to pick up on that. So argumentatively, you know, a brown woolen clothing is probably a lot better than a crinkly, noisy windbreaker, made of synthetic materials and is super bright.
Oh, for sure. And I think we talked about in our preset up here, like a lot of animals are colorblind. So depending on what you're looking for, you may want to look into what spectrum, like if you are looking for a specific target, for instance, or a specific candidate for a photo, um, see what their color range is. And try to use something that grays into the rest of it. You know what I mean? Also, blending in, if you can somehow break up the human silhouette, that helps a lot too. So, I'm not saying use an entire ghillie suit. You know what I mean? I guess at the ultimate, yeah, you could, but at the same time, try to stay like to the left and right of roads when you're walking down them, not just down the center of them. You're gonna blend in a little bit more. You're not gonna stand out as bad. If you're gonna go take pictures in a field, don't stand in the center of it. You know what I mean? You're gonna stick out a little more than if you were around the edges and kind of blending into the surroundings. Color wise, maybe you wear something that blends into the surroundings. But I think more importantly, in a lot of instances, or at least with hunting, I've found, well, I guess in some extreme cases, colors can stick you out, is blending into your surroundings. Another big thing that I found, Ben, is reflective stuff seems to spook a lot of wildlife. And I'm not just talking like the lens glare off a phone or something like that, though is a kind of problem. Even reflective striping, like on vests and stuff like that, not only is it bright colored, but reflecting that sun, it catches the eye of a lot of animals, and a lot of animals, especially like omnivores, ungulates is what I'm specifically thinking of. They're trained to look for movement and generally avoid movement. You know what I mean?
Yeah. No, and I mean, if you think about it, a lot of good predators have good night vision, and animals with decent night vision, their eyes are very reflective. So you will see rabbit eyes and hawk eyes and stuff like that. If a little bit of light hits it, it reflects back at you with almost, so that brightness, animals can definitely see that. So be very aware of that. Yeah.
So blending in kind of leads to our next point anyway, so we might as well move right on to this one. And it's using natural cover. And we kind of talked about that a little bit with blending in. They kind of go hand in hand.
Yeah. I mean, you look at any hunter and they'll use like blinds and stuff, but natural blinds are effective too. Standing behind a bush so that your whole body isn't visible if you're trying to get a good look at something, they're less likely to notice your hand or your head than they are your whole body. So, shrinking what they can see of you definitely helps. Standing behind something or just sitting still in a very busy area means that you can get lost in that busyness. So, what's going through my head right now is a picture. If you're on a beach where there's a pile up of driftwood, and you sit in that driftwood and even sort of surround yourself with that driftwood, something from a distance is going to have a hard job picking you out in there. But if you stand on top of that and you're in a silhouette, they can see your whole body. They can see you. Like you're very visible.
Absolutely. And the other thing that went through my mind, the ghillie suit reference again. If you're using, for instance, a forest green ghillie suit in the middle of a brown field, it's still going to look odd from a distance. You know what I mean? It stands out. Use the natural cover around you. In this instance, yes, the ghillie suit would cover you, or whatever kind of false cover you're bringing in would cover you, but the cover itself may become the problem. So using the natural cover and the stuff around you, you just blend into your surroundings so much better.
Um, have you ever seen a video where they actually show you what a dog sees versus what a human sees?
I haven't seen the dog one. I've seen a deer one, believe it or not. I watched this whole research thing on the color spectrum of white-tailed deer for some foolish reason when I worked for Natural Resources.
Yeah. Well, I seen one the other day. It was dog, and they had a red Kong. Um, Kong is a type of a manufacturer of toys, and they threw it out across the lawn. And to a dog, green and red are the same color. So that bright red object you just threw and is standing out to you like a sore thumb. To a dog is not. Yet you can see they'll pick it up pretty quickly. They're good at recognizing shape and movement, and they've seen it bounce and they'll lock onto that. So I mean, animals are across the board are kind of similar to that. They have their skills. But yeah, just if you spooked an animal, if you stop and stay still for a while, it doesn't take long for them to sort of like forget about you. And of course, if they're used to the human silhouette, it's great to break that up. So natural cover obviously is really going to help you with that. So yeah, moving slowly, be patient. I mean, I'm sure we'll get to that. We are going to get to that. You know,
I mean, it leads right into our fourth point, Ben, so keep on going.
Yeah, be real patient. Like if you stop and you go to a spot where this should be a good spot to see animals, just be patient. Sit down, be quiet, and enjoy the moment. And animals will come, especially if you're in a good wilderness area. It might not be the animal you're looking for. You might go out and say, I want to see some bears today and I want to see some buffalo. And maybe there's no bears or buffalo today, but you're going to see something. It might be squirrels and chipmunks and rabbits and turtles and all kinds of other wonderful animals. And but be patient and sit there and wait. Now, the more ideal location you pick out, the more you can sort of ideally pick out what animals you're going to see, what wildlife you get to see. But talk to any professional photographer, and they'll tell you it took oftentimes hundreds of hours to get that one perfect picture.
No, for sure. And specifically nature photographers. A buddy of mine, or a friend of mine, I should say, she was big into amateur nature photography. And she used to really like taking bird pictures. And I can remember her telling me, like, she waited months, literally months, to get a photo off a specific bird. And I'm sure we're going to talk about all the things they use, but I mean, that's patience. And patience is a virtue. You know what I mean? You got to learn this stuff if you want to be serious about it. If you just want to go out and be a fun photographer and just take pictures of whatever's out there, that's one thing. That's kind of my photography. But if you're specifically looking for something, patience is a virtue. I mean, once again, going back to Nomad's comment, these are skills even from hunting and stuff like that they blend over. As most hunters will tell you, you don't go out and just bang, you're done. You know what I mean? Sometimes it happens like that, and sometimes it'll happen in photography. But a lot of times it takes prep, it takes patience, it takes a lot of the same things we're going to talk about here.
Yeah, and I guess kind of going hand in hand with patience is sort of the opposite, but be ready. Like you said, you go hunting or you're going for that picture. Patience is a virtue, but you also need to be ready. Don't be thinking you're necessarily going to have to be, this is going to be hours, so I can put the camera in the bag and I can do this and that. And then when you're ready, it comes out. It's too late to get the camera out. It's too late to load the gun. You have to sort of balance that well with, once you're in the area, be prepped. And that goes for so many things in bushcraft. You're walking across ice, have the ice picks out. You're going hunting, have the gun or the snares ready to put out. And if you're going photography, have the camera ready, have the settings set up, put it in the right modes that you plan on shooting. And if you are sitting patiently waiting for somewhere, there's a good time to take a few minutes to shoot a few images just to make sure you have the light settings right, zoom in, figure it out. So once you kind of know what you're going to do, you're prepped for that. This was something that I seen years ago in the military. When you get to a spot and you're set up, they range different spots. So they'll look at a tree and you'll range in that tree. You'll know the range to that tree. You'll know the range to that rock. You'll know the range for that crest. And so you'll know what you can shoot for and what you can't, when you need to prepare and how long it should take to cover distances. I mean, this is an extreme version of that, but yeah.
But I mean, it's, once again, they're real skills that professional photographers would use. So depending on how far you want to take yourself into this hobby or sport, whichever way you look at it, it's not outside the realm of impossibilities. You know what I mean? Or it's well within the realm of possibilities.
So next, when is the best time to do this? Now, there'll always be a debate on this. And a lot of people are going to tell you, and there's a few reasons for this, early at morning and in the evening, just before, probably an hour before sunset, when the suns are low, you can get great photography and all that. And more animals do tend to be awake because you got your nocturnal and your daytime animals that are both moving around around the same time. It's when the most animals are active. That being said, there might be a bit more to it than that.
Yeah, and this is going to lead into one of the other points that we're going to talk about later on. It's kind of knowing the species that you're going for. Once again, if that's what you're looking for. If you're just going out for whatever, then you're going to get the majority of animals, like Ben said. Move early mornings and late evenings. During the day for different reasons. One, the sun is out, you're easy pickings. Sometimes it's just too hot. Like the middle of the day is just generally not high time for animals to move. In the morning, they're waking up, they're coming out of bedding, they're trying to get out there, look for food. In the evenings, the complete opposite. They're moving towards bedding. They're looking for somewhere to bunk down for the night. This is when you're going to see a lot of movement in the majority of animals. But like I said, there's always going to be differences. If you're looking for something specific, now you got to start looking into a little bit more information about that specific animal.
Yeah. I seen a study a little while ago talking about deer, for instance, and actually, apparently deer are most active near noon.
Is when?
Near noon. At least
Near
there's
noon.
one study I found. Yeah. People always say, oh, you're going to get your best shot at deer in the evening and the morning. But a study, and I mean, this could be a localized study, and there may be others coming out later that disproves it. But it was interesting that, I think it's worthwhile doing some research. And again, just being ready. But it doesn't hurt to start early and take, it goes hand in hand with the patience, right?
For sure.
But I take fishing, for instance. I always had best luck early in the morning and late in the evening.
Me as well. And anytime I'm hunting, generally that's when I harvest my game, is just after morning, like early to mid morning, or late afternoon to early dusk.
Yeah. So, but yeah, it's interesting.
What's John Doe saying here? And welcome to the show, John. Birds often come into my camp. I found just ignoring them works. I noticed the same behavior with animals. Say a squirrel walking past a wood stork. They seem to ignore each other as passing. And we've said this in the past. Just sitting in the woods, either hunting or just chilling out, having a cup of tea over a lake. I've literally had squirrels like run up beside me, just kind of look at me and be like, "The hell are you?" and wander off, literally within arm's reach of me, just having a cup of coffee. So just once again, I was just sitting there, kind of leaned against a tree, looking at a lake, enjoying my morning coffee, and bam, you know what I mean? I'm non-threatening, I'm not making jarring motions, I'm not standing out, I'm kind of blending in, all the things we talked about. And yeah, it's a
Yeah,
squirrel, but I mean, this is any animal.
but I said that early too, right? Like not making the eye contact, not moving towards them, not making actions towards them. If you're more or less ignoring them, they more or less ignore you. They can sense your intent. And if your intent is to just let them be and not to pay too much attention to them, they won't. I find it works really good with cats too, for whatever reason. You ignore a cat, it'll come to you every time. You pay attention to a cat, it avoids you like the plague. Uh, so it works with a lot of other animals. So I agree completely there, John. Trail cameras will definitely help you find out what animals are in the area. Um, and so 100% because it's pretty unobtrusive. And after it's been there for a few days, they forget it's there. They noticed. I truly think they noticed them when they're first put out, but they quickly ignore it because it hasn't done anything. So obviously it's not a threat. So they ignore it. Um, and this works for people too, believe it or not. They've done studies where they put cameras around people, and for the first few days, it changes the behavior. But after a period, people forget the cameras are there and they continue doing what they always did before. And it's why we can catch people, shoplifting and stealing out of the till. It works the same for animals. You put it up first a little while, they may disturb the environment, but shortly thereafter that goes away. So a great way to find out what's in the area and what time they come through. And this is what hunters use it for, right?
Oh, 100%. My only blurb on trail cams would be uh, make sure that you have a trail cam that's quality enough to look for the wildlife you're looking for. For instance, and I just happen to have one behind me, my cheap little trail cams that I use for white-tailed deer, I probably wouldn't use to try and track hummingbirds. They're just, you know what I mean? The trigging area and stuff like that, it's just not going to pick something up like that. But a higher end camera may. So you may, mileage could vary there. It's another variable to take into that if you want to go down that road. But yeah, like Ben said, 100% super viable way, especially if you're scouting a couple different locations for a specific animal. Like, for instance, there's a moose in this area, and here's a couple areas that seem like it would be a good area for that moose. Throw them up in a couple different areas and see if there's a pattern. A lot of times, most animals have a pattern where they're roaming a specific range, and they'll come through almost on like clockwork.
So kind of dovetails right into the next one. Learn the animal signs. So you said there's a moose in there. How do you know there's a moose in the area? Because you find tracks, you find scat, you find different ways that trees have been chewed or eaten. So you can tell what kind of animals are coming through by the signs they leave. Every animal has its unique signs. Some animals much more blatant than others. It's much easier to track a bear than it is a hummingbird. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
I've yet
there's
to
no mistake in bear scat, that's for sure.
Right? I've never tracked the hummingbird. I have tracked the bear. I have tracked deer. I have tracked, other larger animals. Smaller animals a little bit trickier. Squirrels going to scamper up trees. Most of their tracks are beyond my ability to even see them. They're too far up. When they get on the ground, you can see them. But also animals like that, they're usually so numerous that seeing them is a lot easier than probably seeing their tracks. But understanding what the signs are. The other thing that sort of dovetails into that, what's the attractants to the animal? So understanding what they eat and do stuff like that, that'll also help with that. But so the signs, there's what I call the direct signs and the indirect sign. And the indirect sign is the things that sort of bring those animals into the area. If they're present in that environment, because that's the things that'll sort of attract into it, right?
Oh, 100%. A big thing for me is a water source if there's none relatively close. Most animals, all animals, need some sort of water to survive. You know what I mean? Some animals, they manage to find it, like smaller animals, they can usually find little reservoirs and puddles and stuff like that. But larger animals, if that's your thing, they're going to need a substantial water source. So if you're near the only pond within 10 kilometers, chances are any animal in the area is eventually going to come through there to get a drink. You know what I mean? Or a specific food source for that animal. What does that animal like to eat that time of year? And notice I said that time of year because it may not be in the summer. The favorite the favorite food of like the black bear is green beans. You know what I mean? Especially going into the fall too. Early springs, it's going to be a lot of berry fields. It's
Yeah.
easy pickings and things like that. You know what I mean? So learn where the animal, or learn what the animal you're looking for wants to eat during the time of year you're trying to get the shot.
Yeah. So uh, next one, I think this kind of we covered it a little bit, but avoiding strong scents. Um, and I really want to point out this. We think visually because humans are very visual creatures, but many other animals are notoriously poor sighted, nearsighted, or limited sight. A lot of animals have a significantly stronger sense of smell than me or you, and so they guide themselves by these scents. They can sense food, they can sense enemies, they can sense everything else. And so if you go in wearing, your favorite cologne or brand new fresh clothing from the store that have that fresh new scent to it, you think about getting in a brand new car and there's that new car smell. Well, when you put on a brand new jacket that's high in plastics and other chemicals and stuff, to an animal, that's the same thing as going in with a siren and flashing lights. They can smell that from a mile away easily. And so they know that there's something that's not right, that's not normal for their area, and they're going to be a little leery from it because they're generally timid. Most animals are timid, and if there's something new, they're going to avoid it until they're sure that it's safe. So there are products you can get to eliminate your scents and minimize your scents. But
And yeah, I've used them. And everybody's gonna have mixed emotions on them. I mean, I know people that swear by them. I know people that don't care about them. But I mean, when I go into the woods, regardless of when I go into the woods, I try to use limited scents anyway. I wash my clothes in hopefully a scent-free, mild detergent. Even the deodorant I put on, and this is one of the things we were talking about before we came up, I try to get something that doesn't smell too strongly, but that's still effective, because I found a lot of heavy scented deodorants can attract bugs. You know what I mean? And that's something I don't want while I'm in the woods either. So not only could it deter the animal you're looking for, it could attract some unwanted pests.
yeah, and again with the laundry detergent, don't use too much. A lot of people, this is a known fact. Most washing machines, if you listen to the professionals talking about the machines, most people use way too much detergent when they're washing, so that leaves a residue that would leave an odor. And maybe you love that when you take it out and that fresh smell really means a lot to you. But I mean, it's if you're trying to get close to animals and stuff, that's more apparent than you might think.
And
So
if you are one of those folks that use scent boosters or fabric softeners, these things are designed to leave residues to keep smells in too. So any of my
yeah,
hunting clothes will never see fabric. Well, we don't use fabric softener in my house. Period. As firefighters, we know that fabric softeners, any kind of flammability or flame proofing that a material has, pretty much killed with any kind of fabric softener. Any kind of kids' clothes, baby clothes, things like that should never touch fabric softeners. And it'll even tell you on the back of the bottle. And during Fire Safety Week, they'll tell you all this stuff because any fire retardantness off it is basically shot straight out the window the second you put fabric softener on it because fabric softener leaves a residue. The residue makes everything more close knit and it makes it more flammable, believe it or not. So, anyway,
well,
yeah, fabric
it
softeners.
leaves a thin layer of wax, is it not?
Yeah, that's exactly what it is. It's an oil, actually, oil or wax, whatever you want to call it, and it's with the scent in it, right? It's like basically putting essential oils on your clothes, just in a more diluted, dispersed way. And as you do that more and more and more, it accumulates more and more and more, leaves more and more of a residue. Eventually, you'll notice it on clothes over time. You know what I mean? Static sheets, they can do the same thing. They leave an anti-static coating, but it's still a coating.
Yeah, definitely. So it's something to keep in mind. Next up, this is a good one, an interesting one. Um, Use binoculars or cameras with zoom. And the first high zoom camera we bought was we were in the woods and we actually seen a beautiful picture of an eagle on a shoreline. And it was eating a fish or drinking. I can't remember what, but it was right on the shore. And it was like a pair of them. And it was so gorgeous. And we sat there and we were watching it. And we took our camera and we flashed a few pictures and we got home and we zoomed in on them as much as we could. And you can't tell there's an eagle in the picture. You just couldn't do it with the old I think they're a 1.3 or 3.1 megapixel camera,
Hmm.
and 3x zoom optical. It just wasn't good enough. So we went out and we ended up buying one that had, I don't know, 23x zoom or something, and that really helped us get better pictures. We've since upgraded to different cameras, but honestly, a good long range lens or capability in your camera makes a world of difference when you're trying to get those great nature pictures. And a good pair of binoculars or monocular scope, whatever you want to call it, lets you kind of reach out. And the thing is, over those distances, you're less likely to get noticed. So the animals are going to act much more natural. So that really comes in handy. And again, go see any good nature photographer. And most of them are there. They're running around with a lens on their camera that would, you know, that dwarfs the weight of the camera itself. Like
Oh,
I've seen them
100%.
with, you
They'll
know,
get a bipod or monopod, I guess, for the lens and just hold the camera. You know what I mean?
yeah, no, it's 100%. And you see them and you talk to them and like, yeah, I could pick out a flea on the back of an eagle a kilometer away. And I'm like, I believe you, man. Like, you got this much light gathering capability at the front of that camera. You should see all kinds of cool stuff.
And I guess my only note that I'm going to stick in there is be aware, folks, there is a difference between optical zoom and digital zoom. I'm not going to pretend to be an expert on the subject, but I do know I've been burnt by it in the past. 20 times optical zoom is not the same as 200 times digital zoom. I can tell you that right now.
So digital zoom is, and I will break this down a bit. Optical zoom is how much image you actually have to work with. Digital zoom is cropping in on that. It's a cropping feature. So if as you grow in, those pixels get bigger and bigger inside your image. Uh, to a certain point, if you have enough of a high enough megapixel picture, and it's a good enough photo, you can zoom in quite a ways. You can crop quite a bit out and still get a picture that won't be grainy or hard to see. But be aware, digital zoom is limited, and it's limited really by the optical zoom and the image sensor on your camera. So it helps, but in the end, it is just a cropping feature, and you're generally better off taking the best picture you can with the most optical zoom you can, and then when you get home, try to crop in at that point rather than doing the digital zoom on your camera because you're really not gaining much by it. Um, the only thing is then when you look at the picture, you'll have a hard time deciding what to save or what not to save till you get home. Um, the other thing, especially with the more zoom, the more shake. So get things like decent tripods. Um, and we'll talk a little bit about that because I do know of it. I mean, this is a tripod I just happen to have here. And there's a couple of things. There's a hook on the bottom here. You can put some weight. A light camera on a light tripod is moving around. You want a good weight to hang that down. A lot of guys hang their camera bag or something under. You want it nice and sturdy, and take your time. And if you can, get something that allows you to click the shutter remotely. So you're not pushing on it because if you're pushing that button, you could cause that shake that might cause an image on that. And you got doubts on this, you go pick up any high zoom camera because I've been into photo stores and played with their best cameras, and I'll zoom in on like the sign way across the street or down the road, and it's like it's like you're driving on a train, but you're standing still. You're like, I'm holding this perfectly still, but you are not. So understand that like at those high zooms, a really good solid um, tripod makes all the difference in the world. Um,
And I'm going to refer to your expertise on this, Ben, because like I said, right from the get go, I'm not a great photographer. I like to dabble in it. It's more for the adventure for me. And like I said, I take very generic photos for memories for me. I'm not out there trying to win any kind of magazine contest and stuff like that. But some of the folks out there listening, maybe that is exactly what they're looking for. And I wish them the best in it. I'm just not the one to give advice on it.
yeah. So, yeah, I mean, if you stay covered and then you got something with long range, you really are going to be able to observe things without them ever knowing you're there. So that really works. Plus that zoom increases your area if you've got a good vantage point. I do realize if you're in a small area and it's tight, that zoom is useless to you. So, you're in a heavily forested area, you're only going to see as far as the trees will allow you. Next, and we've covered this, but I'm going to bring it up as a standalone topic as it is. Stay quiet. So, a good example of this: don't take your most yakketive friend with you.
Don't listen to music while you wait. I mean, if you have earbuds in,
Yeah,
that's one thing, but don't like have your little crank radio blaring beside you.
but even with that, like say you do go in with a nice set of Bluetooth earphones that are, sealed to your ear or inside your earbuds, and you're listening to your music, you're tuning out one of your best senses in the woods. And so what's going to happen is you may not hear the rustling that might have alerted you to, an eagle landing in a tree only a short ways away, or a deer coming out of the woods. You miss a lot of stuff. So if you're out to observe nature, try to be in nature while you're doing it. And so, yeah, not trying to be condescending with this, but yeah, be a bit quieter. It really is the place to shut down that external noise and try to be quiet. Um, so,
No, I have nothing to add to that, Ben. It's perfect, honestly. Like I said, we mentioned it before, and that puts a nice fine dot on the I. Um, so I guess moving on, and we've talked about this one too. We're actually coming up to some of the top, funny us talking about things ahead of time. But as a standalone topic, once again, study the animal behavior. And we've talked about this specifically if you're looking for an individual animal. If you really want a picture of a moose, figure out where are moose. What is their environment? What do they like? What do they like to eat? When is their breeding seasons? When should you not go around them? This is another important thing depending on some animals that you're taking pictures of. A bull moose going through the rut is not an animal that I want to meet in the woods. You know what I mean? Or a doe moose with a little one, like, fresh after birthing. That's another animal I don't want to mess with in the woods. There's times when you can go after an animal that's going to be safer. There's times when you can go after an animal and they're going to be more easier found. You're going to have to, balance out what you're looking for and when you're looking for it, and take all these factors into mind. And once again, food sources, water sources, game trails, these are all things that we can keep an eye on to study that animal's behavior. What is their scat like? What do their tracks look like? If the animal has separate tracks for the different genders, what are the different, signs of the individual tracks? As hunters, we look at that quite a bit. Specifically, if we're looking for a male or female deer, you can tell that by the track. And if there is no female deer hunting in your area, if you're following a bunch of female deer prints, you're basically wasting your time. You know what I mean? So you got to learn these things about whatever that you're looking to capture on photo.
yeah, I mean, an interesting group for this is bird watchers. Bird watchers are extremely good at identifying an area that you'll find a bird or a specific species. But the other thing you'll notice if you hang out with them, they absolutely love finding an animal outside of its natural habitat.
See, I've never
So,
hung around any hardcore bird watchers. A couple people in my fire department, they're kind of amateur bird watchers. And I mean, I think that's pretty extreme. But I have also heard of these people, Ben, so enlighten me a little bit.
so there's a whole bird watching community. I am not part of the bird watching community. I do know a few people who are. It's a very interesting community. It's something if I had more time, I'd probably be into. These are the people who will have the field guides and they can tell you exactly where birds are generally found. But every year you'll hear about a bird that blows out of off course or ends up somewhere it's not supposed to be. And they will make it their life's goal to get a picture of a XYZ bird in XYZ area. They will travel to take a picture of a bird where it should not be. Yeah, they will
That's
find
more
out
dedication
bird
than
that's
I would have. I know we got something up here. It was, and this is the one that made me think of it. It was I'm going to call it an albino cardinal, but it's not an albino cardinal. There was something that happened to this bird. It's a genetic defect. It basically causes its feathers to get really white. It's not
Yeah.
albinoism, it's something else. But anyway, this group of people just went absolutely nuts for it, and I'm like, dude, it's a bird. No, I take it back, folks. I apologize. There is legitimateness to this. If this is your thing, 100% do what makes you happy, gets you out in the woods. I just didn't understand it. I didn't understand there was such a passion about, finding these things. But I am realizing a little bit more that sometimes I don't
Yeah.
need to put my feet in my mouth.
A few years ago, there was a bird found in Newfoundland that I think was originally only found like in Florida and pretty well that area. And what they figure happened is it got caught up with one of the hurricanes. It ended up in Newfoundland. It stayed there for 6 or 7 weeks in a certain area, and people are going crazy to get pictures of this bird that was where it was never found before. What happened to that bird? I have no idea. Did it make it back eventually? We hope so. But yeah, this is something they really get into. But people do this with all kinds of things. But birds, there's such a variety of them that it can be really fun. You've heard of train spotters and plane spotters. These are people that will make it a goal to see every single 747 that has ever flown. And they will go places just to see this or see that one train or that one thing, right? Well, they'll do this with birds too, right? They want to see an emperor penguin. They want to see this. They want to see that. And it doesn't count if you see it in a zoo, or it doesn't count if you see it where, you know, they want to see it in its either natural environment or even better, in a place that naturally ended up that's not part of its natural environment. That's
So just
um,
catching up on a couple of the comments here. There was a little chat going between Nomad and John, but catching up to
yeah,
some of the ones relevant to the conversation here. Not saying that your conversations ain't relevant there, folks, but I'm going to leave your personal stuff out of our live cast because I don't like broadcasting anything like that. So, John, I've got some good video of animals stalking, hunting. Both prey and hunter are aware of my presence, but more concerned about each other than me. Great video opportunities. And this is the thing, you know what I mean? If you're not being threatening, you are not the biggest concern out there in the woods.
yeah,
um, Nomad, it's like collecting anything rare and unique, like a stamp or coin collection. Red Sand, Danny. I think we had a rare eagle from Russia that was hanging around PEI this past fall. Nomad, he heard about it. Um,
yeah.
so, I mean, yeah, it's a thing. I openly admit it's a thing.
Yeah. So great, great thing. Another piece here. I mean, this has to do with scent and a bunch of other things. Stay downwind.
And this
So
was brought up in the comments a little earlier. I didn't mention it because I knew it was coming up. It wasn't that I didn't see your comment. Go ahead, Ben.
but yeah, I mean, it does dovetail in with the scent and stuff, but there's a little bit more to it. Staying downwind just improves your chances. Like I said, many animals depend on their scent way more than their eyes. They don't trust their eyes nearly to the level we do. That's something it takes people a bit to understand. But yeah, no, it's definitely a real thing. So I don't think we need to focus on that too
No,
much,
but
but
it is a good tip. And I mean, we are trying to break these down into tips. So staying
be,
downwind, it's definitely a good tip.
be mindful of your shadow. And I have a really good example of this one. Or more so, like both your shadow and the range of awareness of the animals around you. Years ago, I was on Bellevue Beach in Newfoundland, and it happened to be at the time the capelin were rolling in, and people are thinking, "Where the hell are you going with this, man?" If you Have you ever seen capelin roll in? It is an amazing sight. You're talking millions and millions of fish trying to get up on this one little beach and breed, and the water turns black from them. But if you walk down to the water and walk along, they will avoid your shadow. They will avoid a certain level, and it was like 12 feet, I think, was about what I calculated it to be. Whereas I walked along the beach, you'd be like probably 6 feet from me, but like a diameter of 12 feet or so, that those fish would avoid. And so there was if I walked out in the water, they circled around me. They stayed well out of my reach. When I went down and seen the ducks today, same deal. Ducks stayed probably 5, 6 feet away from me. Some of them got maybe as close as 2 or 3 feet, but they all maintained a certain distance away from me. But yeah, if your shadow goes across them, they'll startle, they'll move away. So be aware of that, especially for short-term things. Plus, it's something else. Like they may not see you, but they may see your shadow because your shadow moves, and sometimes that moves a lot more than you do. It's not proportional. So,
And if you want a good example of this, folks, go for a walk with street lights. You know what I mean? As it gets further to your back, as the sun's setting, prime example, things like that, your shadow, you may be a 6 foot individual, your shadow now spans out 30, 40 feet.
yeah. So be very aware of that, especially in the bright, the early morning and the late at night. At noon, there is no shadow. To that degree, it's like straight down on you. But it changes the image and it makes it harder to get a good picture. That's why they call it like the golden hour, is that half an hour before sunset and sunrise, or right after sunrise, when the sun is just like perfect. The shadows are almost um, much better. Um, Next one is sort of just
We
something we
always
talk.
say this and we're throwing it in now.
Yeah. Leave no trace. So when you go in and you find a natural shelter or whatnot, um, avoid tearing down a bunch of trees to create a shelter. Sometimes I know you have reasons to do it, and we won't get into that. But look for things that you don't have to change. Don't change the environment too much to witness it. Um, there is
Don't
a
change
study.
the environment to suit your needs, especially if you're trying to find an animal in their natural environment. If you're in there screwing with it, it's no longer their natural environment.
I think there was something to do with Jane Goodall and investigating the great apes and stuff like that. They said like her presence alone changed their behavior, and that's a known fact, right? And the more you change the environment around animals, the more you affect how they act and how they react. So the very action of observing does have an action on other things. The further away you are, and the more you isolate that, the more minimal it is. But yeah, try to definitely try to avoid that. Don't leave garbage around. Don't change the environment, and obviously protect it to the best of your ability. Things like campfires and stuff can really affect animals. They'll smell that smoke. They'll see the light. That's going to drive them away. So when you're really looking to do that, keep your campfires and stuff to your camp area, and don't necessarily attract animals to your camp area because it can be detrimental to both you and the animals. So,
And
um,
John made a comment that leads right into our next point. John's comment: it's also against the law to disturb some animals by, say, taking photos. Sea turtles are a good example. Big fines here for not staying away from them. Brings us to our next point: educate yourself. Because there are regulations and stuff on things like this. Sea turtles, prime example. Here in Nova Scotia, piping plobbers. You can't be running around on beaches with known piping plubber habitats and destroying it. It's illegal. So educate yourself. Yes, it may be something you want to, photograph, but can you do it safely without breaking any laws and affecting that wildlife?
well, I was out fishing this year. We were doing some salmon fishing out on the ocean. Great time, by the way. And a pod of whales swam into our area, and the law, and it's an interesting law. Like you're not allowed to run the engines when whales are within so many feet of you. And it's quite a distance. It's not like 50 feet. It's much more than that. So once we were aware of those, we had to shut them down, and we had to be very careful because we were also close to the shoreline. So you're trying to avoid hitting the shore while not affecting the whales. Um, but yeah, uh, is it okay to feed animals? Generally, I'm going to say it's not. And I had a conversation with my daughter today about this, and she liked the ducks, and she's like, "Could we feed the ducks?" And I said, "We can't, because people are obviously feeding these ducks here." But I said, "You have to be careful when you feed an animal because now it's going to become much more friendly towards humans, and they're going to come up to humans. And although we may not want to cause harm to these animals, others might. Others may walk up that same area, and the birds come close enough, they might kick them or hit them or hurt them because they're used to people feeding them. They think it's safe, and now you've changed their natural behavior. You've changed what they are. You've essentially started the domestication process, which is not necessarily healthy to you or the animals. So
Another example of that here in Nova Scotia, Victoria Park in Halifax. Or no, what's the one in Spring Garden there, Ben? Help me out here, bud. Uh,
I don't remember names. Once been
oh, I
garden.
can't remember it either because I don't go to the city enough. But anyway, there's a park, Victoria Park's in Truro. I don't know why I said that, but it like the Spring Garden Road in Halifax, big city in Nova Scotia. There's a park off that, and for the life of me, I can't remember the name of it right now. It's right in the tip of my tongue. But anyway, ducks in there. They actually had to put out announcements for people to stop feeding them because these ducks started becoming dependent on that food source and stopped relying on their own abilities to get food. So come winter, when people stopped going to the park, these ducks were screwed.
Well, this is the thing too. Like it has been proven to stop their migration. So ducks that would normally migrate into winter would be like, well, there's plenty of food here. I'm doing quite well. I'm not going to go south. And then all of a sudden, the weather's too bad, or you take a turn for your health or whatever. You go on vacation for a couple of weeks, and these animals that did not, migrate when they should have, they're now sitting there starving because you failed to show up, and then you're feeding them, and you'd set that precedent that there would be a steady supply of food. So you change their behavior. We do discourage that, especially in the wild. So you feed a bird, you have one effect. You feed squirrels, you have another effect. You feed bear, that bear now thinks it's okay to enter campsites. People panic. They start shooting at the bear. Now you've put the bear's life in danger and probably other people because maybe that bear is perfectly fine with you, but when the other people don't react the way it expects to, it gets more aggressive and there's a danger there. So you're putting yourself and others at risk when you change an animal's natural behavior. The best thing about any animal is it needs to be predictable. And the best way to be predictable, by the way, is by not changing their natural tendencies.
By the way, the name of that park was Public Gardens. For the reason I couldn't remember that for whatever reason, but Public Gardens in Halifax, they had to put out announcements on this. John Doe makes a comment here, food for thought. Most snake bites nowadays caused by people trying to get good photos. At least in his neck of the woods. So
I believe it though.
You know what I mean? Most animal attacks, well, not most, but probably a good majority of animal attacks caused by somebody being somewhere they shouldn't have been trying to get a decent photo. I'm trying to think. Common ones with common animals, deer. People, like a deer will wander out. It's somewhat friendly to humans because it was around them when it was small and everybody wants to gather around it and take the old selfies. All of a sudden, deer grows up, goes through the rut, starts mauling people. You know what I mean? I've had this happen. This was legitimately a call when I worked for Natural Resources. These people tried to raise this deer when it was young. It got older, grew some horns, went through the rut. We had to go find it and try and relocate it. We get there. This deer has like Mardi Gras beads around it and all this other stuff because the people have been putting it on it. And of course, it's half out of its mind because it's going through the rut. It's going through its mating season. It's got so many chemical imbalances in its brain, it can't tell up from down. Yeah, they're wild animals, folks.
Yeah, I see the comment here. Also, most venomous snake bites are on males in the mid-20s. Hold my beer and watch this. Yeah,
Sometimes we're foolish. Things. Well, I'm not in my mid-20s.
It's the same. It's the same hormones. Like hormones have an effect on everything. Young males have a lot of hormones going through them. They definitely think they're invincible and they can do all kinds of cool things. They want to impress themselves and their friends, and they do stupid shit. Me and Robert are no exception to this.
And when we get together, we generally push each other a little more too. Not maybe the hold my beer level, but yeah, we can do that.
we definitely forgot to grow up, so don't encourage us, people.
Yeah, we can paddle across that lake in a windstorm. We can do that.
Last but definitely not least, and I want you to think about everything we told you up till now when you think about this one. Bring snacks and water. We said you had to be patient, and I stand by that. I always keep hydrated, obviously. Choosing your snacks wisely does help, though, and snacks that don't necessarily create a lot of sense, that are bringing around the wrong type of animals, and don't leave a lot of mess. So be careful in what you choose. But yeah, if you're going to be out for a day, definitely bring yourself the food and water you need to get through the day. And if possible, it's not always possible, eating food that's more natural and sort of that environment is definitely useful. Yeah,
Less crunchy
yeah, less
snacks and no noisy wrappers. Once again,
yeah,
think of everything we talked about above there. Stay quiet, try to blend in.
yeah. So take
Chip bags, worst thing you can take in the woods. They're crinkly, they're crunchy, they're reflective. I mean, they usually have a strong smell depending on the type of chip you eat, like salt and
yes.
vinegar,
Second
dill
you open
pickle.
that up, everything for a mile knows you opened it up, and for three reasons. So yeah, keep that in mind. Um, you know, nuts and seeds tend to be somewhat easily done. Um, I suggest using, reusable packages, stuff that you're going to take out. You're going to anything you pack in, pack out. I am sick and tired of going in the woods and finding pop cans and chip bags and Tim Hortons cups. And I'm not picking on Tim Hortons. It's just
They're
they're very
just
pop,
they're a victim at the
right?
same time.
Yeah. But McDonald's and Arby's and all these other companies, they're just as littering. And I mean, this is why we can't have nice things anymore. I can no longer get a decent plastic straw. I think there's a change to that. But man, yeah, we don't have the ability to dispose of things properly, and they take it away from us. So, be responsible with your mess. Where possible, use reusable products. Use products that you're going to, that you care about, so you'll carry them in and out. A good water bottle, things like that. I mean, I tend to use now my water bottles and water bladders much more. Um, yeah, but
Basically, bring something for the long haul. You're probably not going to be there for 10, 15 minutes. If you are, I mean, good job, but most of us, we want to get out there and enjoy the experience anyway. So bring some food for the experience. And like Ben said, follow everything above. No trace means you're taking everything back out. So if you're going to take everything back out anyway, use reusable stuff.
like think about this too, right? You bring an apple, right? That's natural. And you get down to the core. Are you pulling the core out? Because if you're not and you're tossing it away, that's 5, 7 seeds that just hit the ground that could grow a tree that's not part of that area. And now that's going to change the environment. It's going to change things. And you'll go back there 50 years later and I wonder where this tree came from. Well, you put it there. Right? And it's not going to be the apple that you planted, believe it or not. Apples don't grow the same, Macintosh apple does not grow Macintosh apples. It
Well, it comes
grows,
in with cross pollination and stuff like that,
yeah.
doesn't it? It has to pollinate anyway. That's a botany's a whole other thing. Or
So
botany, herbology.
don't even think you're doing yourself a huge favor. You come back and you'd be like a really edible apple. It's 50-50 what it's going to come out to be, whether it'll be good or not. It could just be like a crab apple type thing. That being said, I've been in the woods and found awesome apples in Nova Scotia and other places because we have already done this. But minimize your changes. Some fruits and stuff are less likely to grow, but other things are potentially going to grow. But keeping natural plants in an area is a huge advantage. I've seen some really neat things about like natural grasses versus grasses we've brought in and how the root system is different and how it protects the environment. But the brought in ones can outcompete the natural ones. And so it causes more soil erosion and all kinds of other problems. And it changes the environment, the food supply, and has a negative effect. So again, leaving no trace is more than just not cutting a tree or leaving a bit of garbage. It sets pretty deep. Yeah.
And with that, I believe we have actually run up our 1 hour there, Ben. So,
We definitely have.
I think it was an interesting topic for tonight. I think it's one that everybody can relate to some degree. Anybody that has interest in photography and outdoors and getting into a new hobby, I think it was a good topic to actually bring into this because once again, bushcrafting is basically any reason to get you out there in the woods. It makes your stay in the woods more comfortable. Whatever reason you need to get out into the woods, have at it. I support it 100%. I hope you come back and tell us a few of your stories.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. So like I said, get out there, have fun, enjoy it. Let us know how things go. Um, yeah. Do it responsibly.
All right, folks. Till next week. Night, all.
That all.